recorded, so we're going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. And at that time, you'll have a few minutes for question and answers before we move on to a case presentation being presented by Gina Martin from Family Connection of South Carolina. And following that, we'll ask that if you have any questions regarding the case presentation or any recommendations for Gina, that we have a discussion at that time as well. Dr. Martin, what I'd like to inform you about is I'm going to watch the time, and so if we get to within 5 minutes of when the time is getting close, I will raise my hand in my box so that will alert you to that we have 5 minutes left, okay? So with that, Dr. Martin, if you'd like to take the microphone, and we'll go from there.
I think you mean Dr. Key.
I believe I'm following Dr. Keys.
Yeah, I think you mean Dr. Key.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
All right, so it's my turn. Is that what people are saying?
That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to. It would help
Okay.
if I called you the right name, wouldn't it?
Yes. All right, so I am Janice Key, and I work with Liz Wallace. I'm a adolescent medicine doctor here in Charleston, and also I work a lot in schools. I have the first school-based clinic in South Carolina. I started more than 25 years ago at Burke High School. I still go there one day a week. I love going there. So I'm sort of immersed in schools. So Tracy suggested the topic of how to get services from the schools. The screen went away. Should I share my screen now?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Keys.
Okay, let's see if I can do that. Can everybody see that slide? I can't see you all anymore, so tell me if you can see it.
I don't think we can see it, Jan.
You cannot? Okay. Let's see, share screen. And
And then on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a blue button that says share. There you go. Now we can.
Now we can see
now
it.
you can see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Now just trying to make it a slideshow. As Liz can tell you, I'm not very good with technology. So I actually learned a lot about IEPs and 504s in preparing this. This is just 15 minutes discussion, but I learned quite a few things, and I do IEPs and 504s every day. So I'd be interested in the discussion following this. Here's our learning objectives: to learn more about IEPs and 504s and the resources that we can use for them. And this is the ECHO model. Just to remind you, all are ECHO experts, but right now we're having an opportunity to have a common experience to discuss this and learn from this, and then a case discussion maybe to use this. So I found this question, this test about knowledge of IEPs and 504s from attitudemagazine.com. I don't know whether any of you use that resource, but I'm going to leave that with you at the end. I think it's a wonderful resource. And I took this test before I prepared the lecture, and I scored 40, 4 out of 10. So I really bombed. And then even after I prepared the lecture, I didn't make 100. So everybody get out a piece of paper and we'll take this, and then in the chat box, be honest and share your scores. And I'm sure none of you will score less than 4. But first question, these are all true or false. ADHD students with passing grades or adequate achievement scores may qualify for a 504, but not an IEP. Students with ADHD may qualify for one-on-one aids, bus transportation, or more intensive or expensive services in the classroom. Students with ADHD may qualify for positive behavior support plan, even if they aren't exhibiting disruptive or inappropriate behavior. Schools cannot require students with ADHD to take medication in order to qualify for services. Students with 504 plans are entitled to accommodations like preferential seating, but not to services. Ready for the next page? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Schools may require a medical diagnosis of ADHD at the parent's expense prior to proceeding with the evaluation for special education or 504 plan. To qualify for eligibility under IDEA or 504, a student does not need a doctor's diagnosis. Schools may require parents to sign a waiver of liability before agreeing to administer medication at school. Teachers cannot decide whether they will implement an IEP or 504 plan or whether they will teach a student with a disability. And ADHD does not qualify as a disability. 10 questions. Hello, Claire McGeorge. Is everybody finished? Yes? I can't see the chat box, so tell me if everybody's finished. Liz, why don't you read the chat box for me when we're doing this, okay?
Can you hear me okay? People are finished.
Yes. All right, the answer to number 1 is false. ADHD students with passing grades or adequate achievement scores may qualify for a 504, but not an IEP. False. Students with ADHD may qualify for one-on-one aids, bus transportation, or other intensive or expensive services. True. Students with ADHD may qualify for positive behavior support plan even if they aren't exhibiting disruptive or inappropriate behavior. True. Schools cannot require students with ADHD to take medication. True. Students with 504 plans are entitled to accommodations, but not to services. False. Schools may require a medical diagnosis of ADHD prior to proceeding. False. To qualify for eligibility under IDEA or 504, a student does not need a doctor's diagnosis. True. Schools may require parents to sign a waiver of liability. False. Teachers cannot decide whether they will implement a plan or whether they will teach a student with a disability. True. And ADHD does not qualify as a disability. False. So everybody put in your score and see how you did.
So I'll read for you. So the first 2 people both got 7 out of 10. Quite good.
Wow, that's good.
I got 6 out of 10. Dr. Greenhouse got 6 out of 10.
Hello, Debbie Greenhouse. Is that Debbie Greenhouse?
That was interesting.
Yeah, Tracy. Somebody guessed lucky, they said. I'm seeing it now. 8 out of 10. Wow.
Our attorney got 8 out of 10. Good work.
All right. So did anybody get 10 out of 10? I don't see that. So this is the presentation. This is what I learned. There are 2 federal laws that require public schools to provide free and appropriate educational services to meet individual needs. They were both passed in the 70s. For example, my brother, who has dyslexia, severe dyslexia, I have mild dyslexia, he could not read in the early 1960s. And the school told my mom, there's nothing more we can do. And so she had to travel to Boston to study with Dr. Orton. Anybody remember Dr. Orton? And she got a certificate from him in order to teach my brother how to read. He did fine. He owns his own engineering company now. He's a mathematician, not a reader. But these two laws were passed in the 70s to take care of folks rather than have just one size fits all. And one was the IDEA Act, Individuals with Disability Education Act. Another was Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. These are federal laws. So states can add things to these laws, but they can't provide less than these laws. Why is this not clicking? Okay, here's the Individuals with Disabilities Act from 1975. Did you notice 504 was actually passed before IDEA? So I thought 504 amendment was related to the IDEA Act. It was not. It's entirely separate legislation. The IDEA Act was originally called Education for All Handicapped Children Act, and it's been reauthorized in 2004, and then again as Every Student Succeeds in 2015. And this is the website for it with all of the details that's in the Department of Education, which is important. That this legislation is overseen and administered through the Department of Education. And here's the law itself that guarantees access to free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment for every child with a disability. Least restrictive environment is really important, that they have as much participation in what other kids are doing as is possible for that child. For example, Charleston County School District got sued a couple years ago because of overrepresentation of certain kids with demographics in restrictive environments. Subsequent amendments increase emphasis on participating in general education curriculum and also extension of services down through birth. And the IDEA Act has actually 13 different categories. ADHD in this slide is combined with other health impairment. This is one of my misconceptions, that ADHD was not included in the IDEA Act, so it's not eligible for an IEP. It is. ADHD, of course, wasn't even a diagnosis when the IDEA Act or 504 were first passed. I don't think it was in the DSM until the early 80s, late 70s. But with those amendments, it is included. So the IDEA Act includes several different diagnoses about blindness and hearing, but it also includes learning disability. It includes the term other health impairment, which is a grab bag of things that we can use for lots of situations. It includes emotional disturbance, depression, anxiety, speech and language impairment, traumatic brain disability, intellectual disability. Includes just about everything. Here's the differences. We can start at the bottom, actually, of this discussion. The IDEA Act, an IEP, is legislation that's overseen by the Department of Education. So I think the Department of Education is their business. They have made the regulations about getting an IEP very, very detailed and specific. And you all know that because you participate in IEP meetings. So implementing an IEP is more onerous for the school. It has so many layers of regulations. The 504 amendment, 504 plan is overseen by the Office of Civil Rights because it is about access of disabled people to everything, to buildings, to everything. So it includes language about schools, but it doesn't include the details about what's required for an IEP because it's not a Department of Education that oversees it. That's my simple-minded view of why there's that difference. And here's the names of the two laws in the IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is a special education law for children with disabilities, as opposed to Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, was a civil rights law to stop discrimination against people with disabilities. And one of the places that it covers is school. The purpose of the law, the description for the IDEA Act, was a plan specifically about special education, as opposed to the 504 plan is to support and remove barriers caused by a disability. And eligibility is one of those 13 or more disabilities that I listed for the IDEA Act, as opposed to the 504 plan, which covers any disability that interferes with the ability to learn in an educational setting, as far as when it pertains to school. So that is a brief didactic summary about the difference between an IEP and a 504. I personally have trouble. I think it's easier to get a 504 plan accommodations for a child, and schools sometimes resist giving an IEP for just ADHD alone, and I oftentimes only apply for a 504 with a student who has ADHD but not a learning disability, because I'm able to get all the accommodations I want with just a 504 plan. However, if need be, you can apply for an IEP for just simply ADHD or behavior emotional problems. And this is a resource that I'd recommend. This is about ADHD. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but it has a wonderful, wonderful website. It's the person who started is Ned Hallowell, and it includes a very detailed section about IEPs and 504 plans under the resources for parents. So oftentimes if I have a parent who is savvy enough with technology that they can use this website, I have them go in there and choose what they think their child needs from all the lists of 504 and IEP accommodations, and then I write the letter based on that. So that is the end of my didactic presentation. I don't know whether you go straight to the case or...
No, we're going to see if there are any questions.
First.
If folks have any questions for Dr. Key and her experience with either of these, the 504 or the IEP, or trying to obtain one or support parents or children seeking one.
Dr. Keys, this is Dr. Kumar. I hear still that dyslexia is not considered as a learning disability.